What's a professional wrestling conspiracy theory that you've made up in your own head but you completely believe is true? I'll go first. I think this guy, Brian Christopher Lawler, aka Grandmaster Sexay, was squashed out of the business on purpose. Under this persona as Grandmaster Sexay, Brian Christopher was an insanely successful mid-carder in the late 90s and early 2000s as one half, or I guess one-third of the stable Too Cool. This was them, Grandmaster Sexay right there, Rikishi in the middle who was added after the fact, and Scotty 2 Hotty, who's most well known for being the guy who does the worm. So Grandmaster Sexay had excellent mic skills. He was really funny, always willing to be extra stupid for his gimmick. His dancing was hilarious and intentionally really terrible. And he had a really great top rope leg drop finisher. It was always like really well executed. So anyway, as a tag team slash stable, Too Cool had a bunch of success on the mid card. They won the tag team titles a couple of times, though I think one of them was Scotty and Rikishi, but the point is they were relevant culturally and within the business. At one point, he had a couple problems with the law and was released, and so Scotty and Rikishi continued to go on to have more success on their own. Scotty, of course, was again well known as the guy who did the worm, and he went on to win the light heavyweight championship, and Rikishi went on to the most success of all three of them, moving himself as an upper mid-carder to then a superstar who was winning the Intercontinental Championship and stuff. The problem with all of this is that when people were watching any Too Cool match, they were more than likely watching it to either see Scotty 2 Hotty do the worm or to watch all of these guys dance in the ring afterward. Nobody was really turning on the TV going, oh man, I can't wait to see what Grandmaster Sexay's doing. Maybe except for me, because I was actually a huge fan of the guy. Anyway, at one point they busted him carrying some substances over the Canadian border that he shouldn't have been, and they released him from the business, and these two went on to be just fine, and he was basically not spoken about again until a number of years later when they tried to bring him back. But when they brought him back just as Brian Christopher. He was no longer in the Grandmaster Sexay character, and basically nobody knew who he even was. Even now, after he's been gone for so many years, there are still tons of people who don't realize that Jerry the King Lawler is this guy's dad. So when they brought him back, they tried to get rid of the Too Cool image from him and have him undergo this feud with his dad where he's like trying to shed the image of being in his shadow. And the entrance that he made in this episode was one of the most humiliating things I've ever seen. His music's pumping, he's dancing his way to the ring, he's getting all pumped up, and the crowd is silent. You could have heard a light breeze roll through the arena. It was so quiet. Just nobody cared. It was really hard to watch. And I think that the higher-ups in the business knew that would happen and did it on purpose. Too Cool was a massively marketable tag team. Scotty 2 Hotty was still available to wrestle at the time. Rikishi was still a superstar. Why not just bring them back? They brought back the Hardy Boys. They brought back D-Generation X. Why not bring back one of the most popular mid-card tag teams ever? Because they didn't like the guy. I think that bringing him back this way was a very purposeful humiliation ritual intended to get him out of the business altogether. And it worked. And even when he was still relevant as Grandmaster Sexay, he never got a light heavyweight title run. He only had one tag team championship run, and it was really short. And it's just like, man, did they underuse this guy. In other promotions in like Memphis and on the indie circuit, he did pretty good. He won titles all over the place, but for some reason, they just didn't like him in the WWE. And so when his demons presented themselves, he wasn't treated as though he needed rehabilitation and stuff. They were just kind of like, get out of here, bro. And I just think it was really sad the way that this whole situation went down. I personally am convinced that if they hadn't embarrassed him in such a terrible way and just let him get back into his old character, maybe he would have had some success and would still be with us now. Rest in peace, Brian Christopher, who I believe is maybe the most underrated mid-carder of his era.